Today we're going to learn how to get information about the technologies used by the target website. So we're going to use a website called Netcraft, and I'm going to put my target here, and as you can see I already put it there, isecurity.org. So I'm just going to hit enter. And again, first of all, you'll see some basic information such as the website title, the description, the keywords, and when the website was created. Scrolling down, you'll see the website itself, the domain name, the IP address, just like we've seen it in the previous video, the domain registrar, so the company who registered the domain for us, for iSecurity, and you'll also see information about the organization. And here you can't see it for this example because iSecurity is using privacy protection, but usually you'll be able to see it and see more information. We can also see that it's hosted in Netherlands. We can see the name server, which is dimnof.net. And again, if you just go to dimnof.net, you'll discover that this is a website for web hosting. So we know this is a web hosting company. In worst case scenarios, we can use this or try to hack into Dimnof itself to gain access to iSecurity. Scrolling down, you'll see history of the hosting companies that iSecurity used. And we can see that the latest one is this one, and it's running on Linux with Apache. Same server that we've seen in the previous video, 2.3.31, with Unix mod SSL and all the other add-ons. Again, this is very important to find vulnerabilities and exploits on our target computer. In the security section, you'll see if the website has any spam, and you can see that it doesn't really have any spam. Scrolling down on the web trackers, it will show you the third-party resources or applications used on our target. So we can see that our target uses Google Analytics, Google CDN, and other Google services. So this could also help us to find or gain access to the target computer. The technologies is one of the most important tabs or sections in here because it shows us the technologies used on the target website. So we can see it's using Apache web server. We already know that. On the server side, we can see that the website uses PHP. So this means the website can understand and run PHP code. This is very important because in the future, if we manage to run any kind of code on our target, then we know this code should be sent as PHP code. So if we're creating payloads in Metasploit or even Vil evasion, we should create them in PHP format, and the target website will be able to run them because it can support PHP. On the client side, we can see that the website supports JavaScript. So if you run JavaScript or if you manage to run JavaScript code on the website, it's not going to be executed on the website. It will be executed on the users who see the website because JavaScript is a client-side language and PHP is a server side. So if we manage to run PHP code, it will be executed on the server itself. If you manage to run JavaScript, it's going to be executed on the users or the people who visit the website. Same here with jQuery. This is just a framework for JavaScript. Scrolling down, we can see that the website uses WordPress. This is very important. So Netcraft will also show you any web applications being used on the website. So WordPress is just a web application, so you could see other examples in your case. And it's an open source web application that a lot of other websites might have. The good thing about this is you can go and find exploits or vulnerabilities within this web application. If you are lucky enough to find an existing one, then you can go ahead and exploit it on the target website. So for example, we have WordPress in our example, and I'm going to go to exploit database. And if we go on the search here, so I'm just going to type in WordPress here, and I'm going to say I'm not a robot. Then we're going to search. And as you can see, we managed to find a lot of exploits related to WordPress. Now these are related to different versions of WordPress, so you need to make sure that you have the same version on your target. And we'll have examples to see how to use exploits like these, but it just shows you how powerful information gathering is. Again, going down, you can see that the website uses cPanel. This is another web application. It's a hosting control panel. Again, you can go on exploit database and see if you can find any vulnerabilities or exploits related to it. And you can also find other information such as that the website uses HTML5, uses CSS, and all that kind of stuff. So Netcraft is really useful. From it, we managed to know that the website runs PHP, it runs JavaScript, it uses WordPress, so we can use WordPress to hack into the website, and cPanel. And we can also, if we go up, we also managed to know the web hosting, or even we found that in the previous video, that Dimnov is the web hosting company of this website. So in worst case scenarios, we can try to hack into that web hosting and gain access to our target website. In this video, we'll see how we can get comprehensive DNS information about the target website. So just to give you a quick refresh on what DNS is. So when you type in facebook.com, a DNS server will convert that name to an IP address. Now, the process is a bit more complicated. So the DNS server contains actually a number of records, each pointing to a different domain or to a different IP, sometimes to the same IP. So, but in general, you request a domain name, it gets converted to an IP address. And depending on that, these information need to be stored somewhere. So we're going to query this DNS server and see what information we can get through it. Now we're going to use a website called robtex.com. And I'm just going to put the target website that I want to get information about. So I'm going to type isecurity.org. And I'm going to hit enter to get a report. Now, as you can see, we will get a big report. So there is a lot of information in here, but you can actually use the buttons in here to navigate to any of the sections below. So if you want to directly go to the records or to go to the SEO, all you have to do is just click in here and you'll go directly to that section. What we're going to do right now though, we'll go over all the sections one by one and see what kind of information we got. Now keep in mind the order of this information might be different, but you should have the same sections. So in the analysis, you can see we have general information about the target. So you can see that it's telling us that iSecurity has 3 name servers, 5 mail servers, and 1 IP address. We can see the name servers used by iSecurity, and DigitalOcean is the hosting company that iSecurity is using at the time of recording this lecture. So this is very, very useful because you can go to DigitalOcean right now, you'll see the hosting company, and then you can pretend to be them and communicate with iSecurity, telling them that you're signing them up for a better hosting, you're giving them something because they are a VIP customer, and ask them to log in. Obviously, they'll be logging in to a fake login page, and that way you'll steal their information. You can tell them that there is a policy change that they have to accept, and again, ask them to log in and steal the information that way. Obviously, you'll do this through a fake login page, and this is mostly social engineering, so it's nothing to do with website hacking, and I cover all this in my social engineering course, but it's very useful because if you couldn't hack into the website through the applications installed, then the only way to get in is using social engineering. Now, below this, we can see that the target is using Google Mail servers, so they're not handling their own emails, they're using Google to handle their emails. Again, you can communicate with the target pretending to be Google and get them to do something or to log into a fake page and steal information that way. You can also see the IP address of this website, which can be used to discover other websites installed on the same server. And this is very, very useful, because if you couldn't hack into your target website through the applications installed on that website, then you can try to hack into any website installed on the same server. And if you manage to do that, then you can actually navigate to your target website, because they're all essentially installed on the same computer. And we'll talk more about that in the next lecture. And below right here, we have a number of similar domains to our target. Now, these might be completely irrelevant, but you can have a look and see what you have. Navigating to the quick info, again, you can see the domain name, you can see the TLD, we have the IP address, the name servers. Again, like I said, they're useful because they usually give us information about the domain hosting company or the hosting company hosting the website itself. And we also have the mail servers like we've seen before, it's Google Mail, so that all can be really, really useful. The reverse section will perform reverse DNS lookup. So as I said at the start of the lecture, DNS is used to translate domain names into IP addresses. In a reverse lookup, we use the IP address to see which domains link to this IP address. And like I said previously, this can be very, very useful because we'll be able to discover other websites hosted on the same server, and we can hack into any of these websites and from there gain access to our target. But with the reverse lookup, you won't always get all the websites installed on the same server. Therefore, in the next lecture, I will show you a better way of doing that. But if you really want to see the results of the reverse lookup, you'll have to log in. So I'm actually going to open a new tab. I'm going to go to Robtex again, and I'm going to click on login right here. And the only way to log into Robtex right now is through Google. So I'm going to click on Google. I'm going to click my email. And that's it, we're logged in. So I'm going to close this and we're going to refresh in here. And if we scroll down again to the reverse right here, we have the results of the reverse lookup, and you can either download this as a CSV or view it as a HTML. So I'm going to choose to view it as a HTML in a new tab. And right here, as you can see, we only have Z-Security on its own because Z-Security is hosted on its own server. So there are no other websites installed on the same server. But like I said, if there are other websites hosted on the same server, then you'll be able to see them in here in the reverse lookup. Now, going down, we can see a more detailed breakdown of the DNS records. So you can see here we have information about the A record, and this is the record that's used to translate the domain name into an IP address. So you can see that isecurity.org links to this IP address, which is the IP address of the server hosting or containing the files of the website. Scrolling down, we have more SEO information, search engine optimization info. We have the web trust reputation of this website. We have the Alexa ranking. In the share tab, we have the IP of the target website. Again, like I said, we can use this to get websites installed on the same server. We have a graph representation of all the information we gathered. We also have a history section. This is actually very, very useful because you can use this to track all the changes to the DNS info of the target website. So you can see when they started using Google, you can see when they started using DigitalOcean as their hosting provider. So if we scroll down, we might actually be able to see that they were using a different provider. And here you go. We can see that they were using a different hosting company. This one right here, Demo5. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. But Right now, as we can see, they changed and they switched to a different hosting company, DigitalOcean. So again, you can even contact them pretending to be this company and tell them that you're gonna sign them up for a better offer, or pretend that they violated one of your terms and conditions and ask them to log in to do something. When they log in, you can serve them a fake file, a backdoor, or again, use the login information, get them to log in through a fake web page and steal the username and password. So information is always very, very useful when it comes to hacking, especially if you want to perform a social engineering attack, which might be your last resort if you could not hack into the website using the applications installed on it. Scrolling down, we can see we have the who's information. We had a full lecture on how to get this and how this can be useful. And finally, we have the DNS block information, which basically is a list of websites known to send spam. So usually emails sent from these websites would be blocked or considered as spam. So as you can see, a very useful website that can be used to get information about the server used to host the target website and its relationship with other websites, other servers, which hosting companies are being used. And like I said, all of this can be very, very useful, whether you want to target the website itself, whether you want to target other websites so you can hack into your target website, and even if you want to social engineer one of the admins to gain access to your target website. In this lecture, I'd like to highlight a very important note when it comes to website penetration testing. Websites are installed on web servers on normal computers, like we said before. These normal computers have IP addresses, and using the IP address, we can access our target website. Now, in many scenarios, your target website or your target server will contain a large number of websites. So it'll have the website that you're looking for, that you're targeting, but it'll also contain other websites on the same server, so on the same file system. What this means is, if you, for example, could not find any vulnerabilities in your target website, you can try to hack into any other website that is installed on the same server. If you could do that, then you'll be able to gain access to the server. Gaining access to the server basically means you have access to all the other websites, because the server is just a computer and you can literally just navigate to the website that you want to hack and gain access to that website. So if you're trying to hack into a website and you couldn't find any exploits, then the next step will be trying to hack any other website that exists on the same server. So what I mean by exist on the same server is they have the same IP address. So let me show you here an example. I'm going to be showing an example of zaid.com, so my blog, because there is a lot of websites on the same server. And if we look here on robtex.com, and I came down here to names pointing to the same IP address, you can see all of these websites exist on the same server as zaid.com. So if you could manage to hack into any of these websites, you'll be able to navigate out of that website and then into zaid.com and then gain full access to my website. So let me just show you here. If I copy any of these domain names, for example, we have this one, reba.me, and I'm just going to go onto my terminal. Now, if I do a ping zaid.com, you'll see that this is my IP address of my website. And if I do a ping on one of the websites that exist, and it's for now we're using reba.me. So if I go ping reba.me, you'll see that both websites have the same IP address. This means that both websites are installed on the same computer, and if we could hack into one of them, we can literally just navigate from that website into the other, from our meterpreter shell or from our PHP shell or any type of shell that we're using. Another way of finding websites on the same domain is using Bing, and it's a really simple way. So if you just go on Bing, and I'm just gonna put IP, and then I'll put the IP of my target website. Again, you'll see all the other websites that exist on the same server as your target website, so you can literally hack into any of these websites and from there hack into my website and gain access to it. This is very important because in many cases your target could be very well secured, but the server itself is not secure, so you can manage to hack one of the other websites and then navigate through the server to your target. In today's lecture, we're going to talk about subdomains. Subdomains, we've seen them everywhere. For example, they come in as subdomain.target.com. So for example, you'd have beta.facebook.com, you'd have mobile.facebook.com, or you might have user.facebook.com. So for example, in Google, you have mail.google.com, which basically just takes you to Gmail. Why subdomains are important is a lot of the cases, some websites have subdomains for their own users. For example, for the employees or for certain customers. So they're not advertised unless you're some sort of a VIP customer or if you are an employee. You will not see these subdomains on search engines and you'll just never see a link leading to them. So they might contain vulnerabilities or exploits that will help you gain access to the whole website, but you just never knew about them because they're not advertised. Another thing is, a lot of the big websites, when they're trying to install a new update or add a new feature to the website, they install it in a subdomain. So you'd have beta.facebook.com actually contains a beta version of Facebook, which contains still experimental features. Now, experimental features are great because they're still under development and there's a really high chance of finding exploits in them. And this is actually true. Not so long ago, someone was able to brute force the restore password key for any Facebook user and was able to gain access to any Facebook user. And this was only possible through the beta.facebook.com because facebook.com used to check for number of attempts or wrong attempts, and they just didn't implement that security feature in the beta because they just didn't think anyone's going to go there, or for any reason. Like, the beta usually contains more problems than the normal website, so it will be very useful to try and hack into it. So in today's lecture, we'll see how we can find any subdomains that have not been advertised or even the advertised ones. So we'll be able to get subdomains of our target. We're going to use a tool called Knock. The tool is very simple. You don't really need to install it. All you have to do is download it using git command. So the command is going to be git clone, and then you put the URL of the tool, and that's it. It's downloaded now. So I'm going to navigate to it using the cd command, and we'll see that we have the py file here, and I'm going to run it using the command python knock.py, and then I'll put the IP or the website that I want to get the subdomains of, and it's going to be isecurity.org. And this will show you some information about the website first, and then it'll do a brute force and a Google-based subdomain search for iSecurity. So it'll show me any subdomain that iSecurity might have so that I could try and test the security of that subdomain and see what's installed on it. Maybe I'll be able to gain access to the website through that subdomain. Okay, so the scan is complete now. And as you can see, we managed to find 7 subdomains that were not advertised. So one of them is ftp.isecurity.org. isecurity.org, we already know about this. This is just the local subdomain. We can see that the mail server has its own subdomain as well. And we can see a very interesting one here, news.isecurity.org. This actually did contain a beta version of a script that we were working on, a news script. And at the moment now, if you go to it, it's actually converted and it'll just take you to the actual website because the script is out of development. But now, if you go on news.isecurity.org, it'll just tell you that this has been moved to the main website, and then if you click here, you'll go to the main website with the script installed. So if someone was trying to hack into our website and did this, they'll actually see that there is a script under development, and there's a high chance that they would have been able to find a vulnerability in it and gain access to the whole website. So this just shows you how important information gathering is, again, which can be used to really gain access to websites. Or if you don't do it, you'd be missing a lot of things. For example, you might be missing a whole script with a whole number of vulnerabilities, or you could be missing an admin login page or an employee login page, which is used for admins or employees to log in. So far, we learned how to find any subdomains that exist within our target website and that have not been listed. In today's lecture, we're going to see how we can find files and directories that are stored on our target computer or our target website. Again, these could be useful because these files could contain passwords, they could contain config information, or they could contain information about the actual server, which will help us further exploit our target. Let me just first show you what I mean by files and directories, just to show you the structure of directories on a web server. So here I have my Metasploitable machine, and as we know, usually the web server stuff is stored in var www, and if I do an ls, you'll see, or I'll do an LSLA just so that it's nicer, you'll see that we have a number of files and directories, and we can see that we have a directory there called Metilidae. Metilidae is a web application that is designed to be hacked. Just like Metasploitable, it is designed so that it has a number of exploits so that we can learn how to hack based on it. So we can see that that's installed in a directory called Metilidae. Now if I go here to my IP address, now this is the IP address of the Metasploitable machine. So if I do an ifconfig here, you'll see that it's 10.20.14.204. So I'm in there, and you can see that they have an easy access for me for Metilidae. If I click it, look at the URL here. So it's /Metilidae. That means I'm inside the Metilidae directory. So every time you see a /, that usually means you're inside a directory. So let's go back here, do an ls, and if I do cd Metilidae, I'm going to do an ls, and you'll see that I have a large number of files here. So let's say, for example, I wanted to open one of these files, and we have index.php. If I do index.php, then this is our current file. It's called index.php. So what we learn from this is Metilidae is just a directory inside my web root. So at the moment in the Metasploitable device, I'm in, let me just write it here for you. So I'm in var www Metilidae, and then the file that I'm accessing is index.php. Okay, so I hope this is clear now. So I'm in this directory, and I'm accessing a file called index.php. So if I just do a pwd here, you'll see that I'm in var www Metilidae. The IP address kind of hides where your www root is, so it hides the var www, and then everything after that will be displayed here after the IP address. So what we're looking to find today is all the directories and the files that we cannot see. So throughout these links, we will be able to access different types and different pages. This is the same with any other website, but there is always files and directories hidden that you just never see. So we'll see how we can get URLs for these files and access them and read the information in it. To do that, we're going to use a tool called dirb. And to see how to use that tool, we're going to do man dirb to see all the options associated with that tool. So you can see that to use the tool, you just type in dirb, the URL of your target, and then you put a word list. So the way this works is it works based on a brute force attack, and it just uses a word list of names and it sends requests with these names, and anytime it actually finds something, it tells us that, oh, I found a file with this name. So it will only be able to find names and directories based on the word list that you provide. Now you can create a word list using Crunch, or you can use word lists that come in within there. The options here allow you to configure how the tool is going to work. So you can change things around the way you want it. For example, you can disable the recursiveness of the tool, so it just runs on one directory instead of trying a number of directories. You can get it to ask you if you want it to access a directory or not, instead of it automatically accessing directories and trying to find files within these directories, because this could be exhaustive if your target is a big website. There might be a lot of directories, and then the tool will be trying to access all of them and find files within all of them. So you can see how big the tree could go. You can also set it to use a username and a password if the target website uses some sort of authentication. You can use V for verbose output. And you can also use O to output the results to a file. So let me show you a very simple example of it. I'm just going to run derb on our target, which is 10, 20, 14, 204. And that should be HTTP. Because remember, we're targeting a website, not an IP address. Then I'm going to put the directory that I want to find files and directories within. I don't want it to be accessing anything within other, because we can see here there's a number of scripts installed on this web server. So we have this script, and we also have phpMyAdmin, and we have TikiWiki. So we don't want it to be accessing all of them. We only want it to be working on Matilda on this example. So that's why I'm only using this URL, and then it's going to start finding URLs and files within this particular web application. So I'm going to hit enter, and we're going to let it to work. So this is going to use a word list file, and it's using a default small word list file that is stored in here. So it's in user shared derb word lists common.txt. You can have a look on this directory and see if there is any other word lists that you'd like to use, and you can use them only by placing the full path to the word list after the command. So instead of the way I wrote the command, you'd write it like this, and then you'd state where your word list is. For example, let's say if it's in root, you state it as root word list .txt or whatever. But at the moment, it's using the default one, which is stored in this directory in user shared derb word lists, and it's using the one that's called common.txt. So we can see here from the result, it was able to find a number of files. Some of them we already know of. Now the fave icon is just an icon, footer and header, these are probably only style files. Index is the index that we see usually, so it's alright. Login, we can see that we discovered a page that allows people to log in. Now in many scenarios, I was able to find username and password of a target exploiting a really complex exploit, and then ending up not being able to log in because I couldn't find where to log in. So tools like this could be very useful. And here we can see that we have a login page that we can use to log in. Page not found, not very useful. You can see the PHP info file. Now this file is usually very, very useful because it displays a lot of information about the PHP interpreter running on the web server. And as you can see, this file contains a lot of information. A lot of them are useful. Now you can see, you get to know some of the directories. You know that it's running PHP 5. The configuration is stored in this file. ini files is usually the config files for PHP, so you can see all the places where they're stored. Going down, you'll see all the permissions, the installed. We can see here it has MySQL, so it's using MySQL, and you can see the directories where different types of configurations are stored. You can also see all the modules and extensions that are being used with PHP. So this file is usually very, very useful. You can see we managed to find where the PHP my admin login is, and that's basically the login that's used to log into the database. Another very useful file is the robots.txt, and that is the file that tells search engines such as Google how to deal with the website. So it usually contains files that we don't want the website or Google to see or to read. So if we can read that file, then we'll be able to see what the web admin is trying to hide. So going in here, we can see that the web admin doesn't want Google to see a directory called passwords. Okay, and it also doesn't want it to see a file called config.inc. And it also doesn't want it to see these other files. So let's have a look on the passwords and the config.inc as examples. So I'm just going to open a new tab, and we're going to put our address like so. So it's the current directory, and then we just put passwords after. In that, we can see that there's a file called accounts.txt. And going here, we can see that we got some usernames and passwords. So we can see there's admin pass. We can see that we have a password as Adrian and some password. So we managed to find usernames and passwords. Now we're still not sure what these usernames and passwords for, but we're sure that we were able to find very useful stuff. Another useful file is the config.inc. So let's see what's in that. And from here we can see that we have information that allow us to connect to the database, because these are saying db host, db user, db pass, and name. So we can see that the username is root and the password is blank. So we can go ahead and try to connect to the database based on these commands, and then we should be able to get access to that database. Also, using these passwords, we're still not sure what we can use them for, but we can add them to a list, try to log into the admin, or just store them in a list so that we can use it if we're going to do any brute force attack. So then again, this is another video that just shows how important and powerful information gathering can be. In this lecture, we're going to have a look on a tool called Maltego. Maltego is a program that allows us to gather information about pretty much everything. You can gather information about people using their name, their phone, their email. You can gather information about websites, servers, anything really. We're going to focus on gathering information about websites, but as I said, you can use it to gather information about anything. So we're going to go to Kali, and we're going to go to all programs here, and I'm going to type in Maltego. And that's it right here. Now, the first time you run the program, it's actually going to ask you to create a new username and password for the program. I've already done that, so you can just do it. Go click next, 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 create a new username and a password, and then just log in. So once you do that, you'll see this, and this is the main screen of the program. Now, right here on the right, you'll see some plugins or additions that you can add to the. These additions allow you to gather different types of information. So if you wanted to install any of these additions, for example, let's say we wanted to install the passive total tool, then all we have to do is just click on the install, click yes, and that'll install it for you. Now, I'm just doing this just to show you, but let's go ahead and create a new blank page, and we'll see how we can use this to gather information. So this is the main view of Maltego. In here in the middle, you have your graph where you can put your entities and track how you gather the information. On the left, we have the palette where you can add entities and gather information about them. And you can see that we can add any type of entity. For example, we can add a person using their name, their email address, or their phone number. You can also add people based on social networks. For example, you can add a Facebook account, a Twitter account, and start gathering information from there. But what we are interested into is a website. So we're gonna start by adding a domain name from here. So I'm gonna click and drag that to my main view right here. And when you add that in here, you can see that on the right here, you can modify the attributes of this entity. And on run transformers. So I'll get back to transformers in a second. For now, let's first modify the domain name. And I'm going to use a domain that I actually have permission to test its security, and it's isecurity.org. So now I can run transformers that allow me to gather information about this domain from the left from here by clicking on the play button, or I can right click it and run a transformer. So I'm just going to go to the home screen right here. And what I'm going to do is right here, you can see that we have the transformers categorized in, and you can click the play button right here. So you can see that there's actually a double play button here, and that'll run all the transformers inside this specific category. If you click on the category itself, you'll see the specific transformers that you can run. So for example, I have a DNS or a domain right here, and I want to see the websites associated with that domain. So I'm going to run the transformer to a website based on search engine, and that will show me the websites associated with this domain name. And right here, you can see that we have three websites. We have www.wifi.isecurity.org, and we have isecurity.org. Now, these two websites are the same, so I'm going to delete one of them. I'm just going to click it and delete it so that our graph looks better. Now, let's see what other information we can get from this. So I'm going to right click it again, and let's see and try to get all the subdomains that exist within this domain. So we're going to track it to name schema. And again, I'm going to click on the play button right here. And now we have more websites. We have news.isecurity.org. We have isecurity.org, which is essentially the same as this. So I'm going to delete this one. And we have ftp.isecurity.org and mail.isecurity.org. So now if we have FTP information, we know we can connect to it based or through this subdomain. Now again, all these websites are associated or stored on the same server, so we can go ahead and try to hack into one of these and gain access to our main website, or you can use them to gain access to our main server, basically. All of these transformers, you can run them the same way, so I'm not going to go over all of them. Let's just have a look on one more, which is the MX record. And what this will do, it'll see the mail servers that the target website uses. And we can see that they're using Google to handle their mail. So again, this is very important because, for example, if there was a certain vulnerability in Google or in the mail server that they're using, then we can exploit that to gain access to their emails and maybe use that to gain access to the website. So I'm going to delete the Google servers that we got because they're no use, because I just want to keep the useful stuff in here. We can use each of these entities now to gather even more information about it. Again, all you have to do is click it, right click, and then run transformers. But we're still not finished with the domain. So I'm going to go back to the domain, and I'm going to go back to the main menu. And right here, we can see that we can get the domain owner details. So we can get stuff like the email addresses. We can check for entities from the who's information, and we can also check for phone numbers. So I'm going to go back and run on the double play, right, and click on the double play to run all the transformations within this category. Now, iSecurity is using privacy, so we won't really get much, but if the target website wasn't using privacy, then you'll be able to get their phone numbers, their address, and very important information. So again, I'm going to delete the useless stuff right here. And we're going to have a look on one more transformation. So again, we're going to go back to the main menu, and we're going to look for files and documents from this domain. And again, I'm going to run all transformations within that category. And this will show me any files or maybe any interesting files stored on that domain. Okay, so this finished running, and as you can see, we got a lot of files. Now, a lot of these are just PDFs, PDF books, but again, in a lot of websites, sometimes you'll get files like the password file or files with sensitive information. So again, this could be really, really useful in your information gathering step. Okay, so now let's see if we can gather even more information about our target. So I've actually deleted all the useless files because they weren't any use, and I kept the things that I'd like to focus on. So in a real life situation, you want to go over each one of these entities and try and gather information about as much information as you can about each of them. For now, I'm actually going to focus on the isecurity.org only, and I'm going to try to find all the websites that exist on the same server. So like we said before, if we couldn't hack into iSecurity itself, then maybe we can exploit one of the websites on the same server and then gain access to iSecurity. So I'm just going to change the topology from here and use something useful like this one. And then I'm just going to drag this one on the side. I'll actually put it down here because I'm going to be using that. And put this one up. Okay. So I'm going to right click it. And I'm going to get its IP address. So I'm going to resolve it to IP address. And right now, as you can see, we have the IP address of the server where isecurity.org is stored on. So I'm going to right click it. And I'm going to try to get the DNS information from this IP address. So this will give me all the websites that exist on the same server. And as you can see now, it automatically changed the topology for me. And we can see that this IP address, let me zoom out to this. Now we can see that this IP address contains all of these servers. Now this server is actually owned by iSecurity, and as you can see that it doesn't have too many websites. So if this was just a normal website, you'll actually see a lot of websites with it on the same server. But because this is a VPS owned by iSecurity only, so we only have the websites that we want to have there, so it's only our websites. But again, we still managed to get three more websites instead of our website. So in case we couldn't gain access to this website, then we can go and try to hack into any of these websites, and they're on the same server. So we'll manage to hack into our target from the websites on the same server. If all of that didn't work, we can see that we have this arrow going into the IP. So usually the websites are hosted by this IP, so you can see the arrows going from the IP to the website here, to this website, and to this website. But right here we can see that the hosted by .diboffen.net is going to the IP. So this is actually a hosting company, and this is the company that we're renting the VPS from. So if we go to this website, you can see that this is a hosting company. And that is where iSecurity is renting their servers from. So in worst case scenarios, if you try to hack into iSecurity, you couldn't do it, and then you try to hack into all of these websites and you couldn't do it, and you looked for exploits in the server itself and you couldn't do it, then you can try to hack into the data center on the website or on the company that's hosting iSecurity, and from there you can gain access to any website hosted by that company, including your target, which is isecurity.org. Now again, you can go over any of these entities and try to gather information about it as well, and maybe get information that will help you to gain access to your target. For example, we can convert bug bounty to a domain, like we did that with iSecurity. And then from this domain, I'm going to look for email addresses associated with that domain. And as you can see now, we have the abuse@name.com, which is no use. But we also managed to get an email of a person working in iSecurity, which is zaid@isecurity.org. That's my actual personal email. So again, if everything failed and you couldn't gain access to it, then maybe you can try to target that person that works at iSecurity, which is myself, and maybe try to social engineer that person and hack into their computer, and from there, again, gain access to the website. Now this is going to get into social engineering, so I'm not going to get into too much detail of that, because now we're talking about web penetration testing, so we're only concerned about the web applications and the technologies used in that.